This is Misty Hale, and I am here with a special episode of Free Arkansas where we are going to talk about your Black Panther stories. So we put out a call for Black Panther stories, and you guys were amazing. You sent, I think, more than 100 Black Panther stories. So we have so much content that I am so excited to share with you. So first of all, I'm going to start with our handy dandy Black Panther sighting map. All right. So this actually doesn't even include some of the latest that you sent this afternoon, but here you go. These are Black Panther sightings around Arkansas, and some of these represent more than one sighting, but I just put one dot there. So you can find this map if you're interested. It's on our Facebook page. So you can go to Free Arkansas Facebook and you'll be able to find that map in the comment section on one of the posts. Okay, so without further ado, though, I'm going to start reading some of your stories. I doubt that I get through them all today. It's probably going to have to be a multi-episode kind of deal because there's a lot. And I don't want to shortchange anybody because the stories were so good. Okay. So I'm going to start, and I'm just going to do these in the order that you sent them. And a few ground rules. When I start telling stories, I get like a storytelling voice. So I apologize for that in advance. The other thing is, if you sent in cuss words, this is a family program, y'all. So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to put in my own substitute word instead. Okay. All right. So we are going to start with Kimber from Rogers. And she said, I 100% had one that hung out off of Pleasant Ridge Road toward Beaver Lake in Rogers. I saw it several times from around 1989 to 1995. It was confirmed by myself and my entire family. Cool, Kimber. Love it. Susan said that in the 60s on Mount Pettigene, she saw one twice. She says, my dad was with me the second time, and he couldn't believe it. We were on our way to Winrock Farm, and we told him being Governor Rockefeller, about it. Governor Rockefeller said he had already been told about it, and the panther was killed by a rancher not too long after that. And then 3 years ago, Susan also saw one twice in her neighborhood in Hot Springs on different weeks. And she said that she lives close to the National Forest there in Hot Springs. Now, Stephen from Ashdown, he sent in a couple of stories. So he said he had seen two different Black Panthers, one in the early morning back in the late 80s with his dad about 3 miles from the place that he lives now, about 75 yards away from a chicken house where there were a bunch of dead chickens. He said they threw out multiple chickens each day from the place that I now own. Another one I saw twice at night in the same spot on a dirt road near Ashdown in the late 90s. Said I hit it one night with my hounds, and it ran across a swamp on the backside of Millwood Lake faster than any deer could go. He says, never mind my dogs being so broke, you could turn them out all over on deer and they would walk right through them. Had dogs that were super fast, and they went from in front of me to out of hearing on the other side of the swamp somewhere in about 10 minutes. Flatbed run the whole time once they lined it out. These dogs would regularly run raccoons down and catch them. They would hit a bobcat now and then, but they would put a bobcat up and then it would jump out. Also, they did not run like this. When they hit this, they were smelling it all over, and it never offered to take a tree. It just took off. Now, Stephen, I got to tell you, I am not much of a hunter. I don't hunt with hounds, so I didn't understand all of that, but it sounds like you're very experienced, and I completely trust you. All right. So Stephen also says, I knew a trapper who worked for the Arkansas Game and Fish. Authorities. He had caught several and told my dad about them, but we always thought it was tall tales until we saw the first one. From what he had trapped, he really thought that they came from a strain that was mainly running the Red River Valley. They aren't quite as big as those tan ones we see now. Knowing what has been found genetically to date, my personal bet is we had a strain of jaguar that threw basically nothing but black ones due to inbreeding of a small population. One option, it may also be the same thing with a black gene mountain lion that was only in this area. But either way, Stephen thinks that they are all now extinct or extremely close to it. I think the last few that were left by the late 80s and 90s were probably all that were left. And once that generation passed on, then it was done. Much like what we saw with the grizzlies in most Western states. Stephen, I so appreciate your takes on that and your stories. Those were great. All right, now we have Cody from DeWitt. He said, if you ever heard one, you know it sounds like a woman screaming. I've heard some in South Arkansas toward DeWitt, Arkansas, and McGee at a deer camp that we had. All right, thank you, Cody. We're going to have a lot of people talking about that scream. Brian said, my grandma used to live in Heber Springs and had a mama and 2 baby Black Panthers. She would feed them raw meat. You know, grandmas, they weren't scared of anything. Love your grandma, Brian. All right, Melinda says about 1960 in Pine Bluff, I heard something screaming late at night in the barn. Lots of deep woods were all around us. My dad said it was a panther. I don't know, never saw it, but I did hear something. Melinda, something was screaming in your barn. I hope it was a panther and not somebody needing help. James from Ozarks said, 3 a.m. coming down Stagecoach Road just north of Ozark. James, what were you doing at 3 a.m.? Came around a curve and one was standing on the side of the road. Coal black, caught it in the headlights, tried to get my phone up to video it, but it slinked down off the hill. I had heard about them up on the hill for years. They are real. Not going to argue with you, James. Thank you for that story. Douglas said, I was not the first person to see it that day. It was probably around 2005. I had heard them before, but never actually seen one. I should also say this is in Lonoke County. The day I saw it, I was deer hunting and I watched it walk away from me. It stayed out of range and calmly walked down the ridge of a tree line that deer typically followed. You know, I love the stories by the hunters. I think they know what they're talking about. Bart from Casco said, my father-in-law tells a story about his farmland seeing one outside of Casco. They were driving combines out in the field and one ran between them, the farmhand being behind him. He called him on the radio and was freaking out. This was in the early 80s. White River Refuge is not far from his farm. You know, I didn't know Arkansas had a Casco. That's another thing I love about these stories is I'm learning about new places in Arkansas that I had no idea existed. So thank you, Bart. Appreciate that one. Mara Lee from Flippin. This is one of my favorite stories. So Mara Lee says, we had a Black Panther family on our farm in 1957, 17 miles outside of Flippin. They were seen many times. An old-timer recently said that Arkansas still has them. Fish and Game would never admit it as they did not have the funds to study them. I like the way you're thinking, Mara Lee. With the entire state turning into a bedroom community, their days are numbered like so many other wildlife. I flew over Arkansas at night recently and was shocked by how little raw land was left. There was a continuous carpet of lights over the entire state. But I do have a funny story. My mother thought it was going to rain, so she made me wear red rubber boots to school. We had to walk a quarter mile down a 2-rutted lane each morning to catch the school bus at 5:30 a.m. The problem with the boots was that she had found a bargain sale. Sounds like a good mom. But while they were my size, they were 2 left feet. I was forced to wear them to school that day very much against my will. After the long bus ride through the hills that afternoon, my brother took off like a bullet. He usually walked beside us 2 girls as we were afraid of Black Panthers. We rounded a corner and my brother, who was hiding in the brush, let out a perfect panther scream. I yelled, "Run, Phyllis! It's a Black Panther!" We took off and cleared that quarter mile in a heartbeat. My brother came in behind us laughing so hard he was holding his sides and fell down laughing. He said, "Your 2 left feet rubber boots sounded like a herd of elephants." I couldn't smack him as he was 5 years older than me. I was 7. We used to laugh about this story after we were grown up, and he lived to 63. I've outlived him by 13 years now. You never think about losing someone when you're that young. As we would sit around the fireplace in the evenings, the farmer would tell Black Panther stories that made us too scared to go upstairs to bed. We were more scared of his belt than the Black Panther stories, though, but not by much. Marilee, I want to meet you. I want to have you on this podcast. I want you to tell me all kinds of stories. Thank you so much for that. Your brother sounds like a perfect big brother, and I'm sorry you lost him, but it sounds like you were blessed with a very good one. All right. Jimmy said, they are here in Arkansas. I have seen 2, along with mountain lions, as they're calling them. I've seen both. I don't care if anyone believes me or not. All good. Jimmy, I like your attitude. Michelle from Emmett says, I saw one in Emmett right after I bought land here, several times by several people. Okay, Emmett, Arkansas going on the map. Chris from Mountain View said, I had a black panther in my front yard, not more than 25 yards from my front porch. Watched him for several minutes. This was in Mountain View, Arkansas, only 2 years ago. All right. Ricky in Cleveland County says, I was sitting in my deer stand in Cleveland County one morning and a big doe came running across the cutover for no apparent reason. After it got across, about 60 seconds later, I saw something black coming from the same way as the doe. At first, I thought it was someone's black lab, but when it got to my shooting line, it stopped for a second, and there was no doubt about it. It was a big black cat. It was only about 75 yards away and went into the thicket before I could get my crosshairs on it. My son had seen it also a couple of weeks earlier on our same lease. Hunters, I'm telling you, I believe them. Okay, now we're moving on to Robert. He's from Perry County. The officials saying that there are no black panthers are the same ones who were adamant that there were no mountain lions in Arkansas, period, just 30 years ago, which I found amusing since I walked up on one at my pond in Perry County and was staring at it from about 12 feet away. I saw the tail, thought it was a dog until I got up over the rise. It just looked at me and I backed away. Smart move, Robert. I like your sense of self-preservation there. All right, Myra from Bradley County, she said, I was around 10 years old. My grandfather took me outside one night to hear the panther screaming. I will never forget the sound. I was sure a woman needed help. This was in Bradley County. Okay, Phil says, back in the 70s, people would talk about a black panther at Lake Spur or Spur Lake, depending on who you talk to. I personally never heard it or saw it, but people who live there sure did. These are not people who made stuff up. I like it. Thank you, Phil. All right. Michael from the Paris area said, I've heard about 10 different sighting stories coming from Highway 109 outside of Paris around Paint Rock Road between the years 2005 and 2010. I suggest building a sighting map to track it and use the dates to map its location or migration pattern. Michael, you're brilliant. I love it. We're doing the map. I don't know that I have the capacity to do the dates and the migration patterns, but we'll get your map started. All right. Danny says in the 50s and 60s, we used to hear them down in the Ouachita River bottoms. It sounded like a woman screaming. Thank you, Danny. I appreciate that. See, Amy said that she saw one on 2 Mike Creek Road in Newark. She says it jumped in front of my car from a cattle pasture across the road and into the other cattle pasture. Tail was as long as the width of my car hood. Beautiful animal, graceful with big paws. I don't care who believes me. I like your confidence, Amy, and I appreciate your story. Corey says, I've seen 2, one coming down the mountain into Marshall and one going south on Highway 14 from the Buffalo River. Corey, you and I may have seen the same one because I saw mine coming from the Buffalo River between Marshall and Snowball. So maybe it's the same mountain lion. This was just a few months ago. All right. Elizabeth said, my husband saw one on our newly bought and cleared land 20 years ago in Pottsville. Just sauntering along the edge of the cleared land, he got a very good look as it had not seen him yet. When it did, it melted into the uncleared area and it was gone. Elizabeth, that's not too far from where I live, so I wonder if there's still some in the Pottsville area. Okay, moving on to Mary Lee. Mary Lee said, down in the Dale Bumpers Wildlife Refuge, we was out picking turnip greens and it was getting dark. You could hear it scream. Then you seen the eyes glow looking up at you. You do not want to wait till you see it in full view. You hear the scream, it's time to go. That is excellent advice, Mary Lee. She also says, I was going through Beebe and Conway. I saw one walking across the highway, not a care in the world, absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Mary Lee. Katina says she heard it and then saw one on the edge of the woods in Judsonia. Shay says he saw one in 2016 in Perrin. Jason says Oil Trough has at least 2 that live on the White River because he has seen them. Thank you, Jason. Billy says she was night fishing in a boat in the 90s. My dad was using a spotlight to scan the shore because we had heard a noise. Up near some trees was a black panther watching us. We were on Beaver Lake. I have also seen a mountain lion at Beaver Lake. See, that's kind of the first one was around Beaver Lake, the Rogers, Kimber. So, yeah, it sounds like there is a population of something up there. All right. Josh says, it is true they do exist. I have a photo of one in a photo album somewhere in my shed. There are several in Arkansas. I have also had pics on a game camera of one out by Pinnacle Mountain. So the people that say they don't exist are crazy. It is just a black mountain lion. Thank you, Josh. Send me that picture. All right. Steve says, here's my story of a black cat. They are not Black Panthers, but are similar to albino cats, just the opposite. Anyway, here's my story. I got a call from Pemiscot County Sheriff in the Boot Hill of Missouri late one evening. The call was that a truck driver coming from Huffman, Arkansas, thought he had hit a black calf. We all had red cows with white faces, but I drove out to the levee to check anyway. Upon arriving at my cows, I found several horses from 3 miles away in our fences that were all injured from running through barbed wire. 3 sets to be exact. The next morning, we helped get them back home, but 2 horses were missing, and one was mine. When we found her, she was on the riverside at the state line and was injured. I went down the levee to check her, and I left my wife and my 7-year-old up top with the truck. When I was checking her horse, my wife calmly but sternly asked if there was a gun in the truck. When I looked up, there was a black cat on top of the levee about 40 yards from our truck. Problem was that my son was between his mother and the cat. I started up the levee and the cat started down the levee, both of us staring at one another. This was 2009. Not long after this, the Farm Bureau had a TV special about cats in Missouri. Thank you for that wonderful story, Steve. I feel like you left out the ending, though. I kind of wanted to know what was going to happen. You kind of left us in a cliffhanger there, but thank you for the story. And again, that was around the Huffman, Arkansas area. Dorian says that he saw one around Cedar Valley in Viola. Tabitha says they are in Star City. I saw one when I was little. You can hear them scream out in the woods down there. There were a couple of other folks who mentioned Star City as well. Mike said in the mid-90s, he was driving near Fortune, Arkansas. It was at night and it ran in front of my truck. Nose to tail, it was as long as my truck was wide. Big black kitty cat. Thanks, Mike. I'd never heard of Fortune, Arkansas, but I looked it up. All right, Deidre from Plainview says, when Plainview had a high school, now it's consolidated with other surrounding schools in Yale County, and it's called Two Rivers School District. The mascot for Plainview Rover School District was a Black Panther, and they were known as the Plainview Panthers. Also heard of many sightings from this area. Deidre, I used to play basketball against the Plainview Rover School District, and yeah, I do remember they were the Panthers. That is a cool reference. Okay, David said about 30 years ago, I was delivering snack food once a week to the little country stores at Highway 1623 southeast of Fayetteville, aka the Pig Trail. One fine day as I drove along, suddenly a good-sized black critter ran out of the woods to my right, turned and ran parallel to the highway for a few seconds, then turned and disappeared back into the woods. I couldn't believe my eyes. The animal definitely wasn't a dog, and it was far too big to be a house cat. When I stopped at the next store at Combs, I asked the people there if there had been any reports of sightings of a Black Panther in the area, and they said, yes, there had been. They told me the Game and Fish Commission would not accept a sighting as official unless someone also found panther scat, which no one had. Panther scat is panther poop. So I couldn't say I had an official sighting, but I know what I saw. Okay, so all of our amateur investigators out there, we need to be on the lookout for panther poop if we want to confirm it with the Arkansas Game and Fish. All right, Eddie Lee says that he has seen a Black Panther twice near Humnoke, Arkansas by Jordan Brake. Thank you, Eddie Lee. Mark posted a picture for us. You can go see that on our Facebook page. I don't know, this one kind of looked a little bit like just a big house cat to me, but I'll let you guys make your own inferences. Dewey said that he has seen one on his brother's camera off his front porch in Van Buren, Arkansas 10 years ago. Thank you, Dewey. Send us that picture. All right. Ricky said he saw one in 1979 between Bentonville and Bella Vista. Thank you for that. That's probably a Walmart now. Nick from Amagon. Thank you very much, Nick. I did not know there was an Amagon. So Nick said, when I was real young in Amagon, Arkansas, and I'm not an old timer, the old timer thing is a reference to the Facebook post that I put out calling for the stories. I said a lot of old timers have Black Panther stories. So I get it. It's not just old timers. Sorry, Nick. I didn't mean to offend. Nick says, I'm only 38, but he says, I was stalked by one coming from an old wooden bridge back to my stepdad's house, and his father saw the cat. I never saw it. I just heard it scream, and as I walked up the road, I could hear it pacing my steps. When I stopped, it stopped. When I ran, it ran. Ooh, creepy. When I got to the porch, my stepdad's father was as white as a ghost and couldn't believe what he had seen, but he knew what he saw, and I believed him. Then, fast forward 20 years later, I was working for a farmer in Jackson County, and I was between Grubbs and Amagon in an area that we call Estaco, and I knew I saw a panther up that way. I saw it this time, not secondhand. I saw it from my tractor. So thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. And yes, I'm sure you're very young and vivacious. All right. Foe said, my father had stories of when he was a kid of panthers deep in the woods, and we had a panther pelt for a long time. So that is very cool. I'm not sure it's legal, but that sounds very cool. All right. Tommy said, my mom saw one in the late 1970s. We live in Independence County, northeast of Cushman. You have to cross a creek on our driveway, and just downstream from the driveway, there's a waterfall. The panther jumped out of the tree on the creek bank. That was the only time anyone ever saw one on our place. So, northeast of Cushman. Thank you, Tommy. Joe says, my dad said one followed him from Barling to Central City. So I'm assuming that he means his dad was on foot walking. In either way, it would be very creepy to be followed by a Black Panther. Thank you, Joe, for sharing that story. Gregory said, I never saw it, but I sure did hear it. It was about 1990 outside of Beebe, Arkansas on Cypress Lake Road. My cousin and I were sitting by a campfire one night in my backyard as kids, and it started screaming. Let me tell you, that scared the, I'm going to insert my own word here, bejesus out of us. All right. Thank you, Gregory. I appreciate that. Luke said, I saw one yesterday afternoon in Lonoke County while I was on my deer stand. Luke, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Again, I believe I'm more inclined to believe the hunting stories. Bill said, I saw one this weekend, first time in about 40 years in Clark County near Gurdon. Thank you, Bill. Susie said, I heard about one near Salem. Sean said he had seen several panthers in Batesville on his aunt's land. She'll even confirm it as well, being that she has had several dogs killed by them. Oh, Sean, I'm so sorry for your poor aunt and her dogs. Thank you for sharing that story. All right, Pierre said, I've seen one clear as day up close in southern Arkansas. It was running alongside the road at night, and I was coming around a curve and had my brights on. It stopped for a second and looked at the car, then took off into the woods. It was about twice the size of a large dog. Thank you, Pierre. Claude says, I have a photo of one from a game camera, but that was years ago, and I don't have the photo anymore. Claude, come on. You have to keep photos of rare or extinct species of things. All right. So let's make a promise, everybody out there. If you have a photo of a Black Panther, you're not going to throw it away. You're going to send it to us. Okay. Moving on. Lindell said, I have seen one in Garland County, Arkansas, and also heard one another time. Thank you, Lindell. Robin says, I have seen a Black Panther. That's it. Robin, send us more details. I'm dying to know. Thank you very much, but tell me a little bit more. All right. James says, I got a story of 2 Black Panthers and a tan panther together about 15 years ago. My family thought I was making it up until my dad left for work one morning before daylight and saw them crossing below our bottom shop in a small field. We think they were heading to a compost shed where dead turkeys were put out to compost after they died in the turkey houses up on top of the hill. James, you are probably right. That's probably exactly what happened. And I love these stories when it's like, I told somebody about my Black Panther story. They thought I was lying, and then they saw it. Well done. Ultimate vindication. Thank you, James. Love that happened to you. All right. Mike said, I was on a tractor right after sunup one morning just south of Helena along the Mississippi River, and I saw one running across a wide open field. Biggest and fastest moving cat I have ever seen. My brother-in-law thought I was crazy until, ding, 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 he saw one in the same area about 20 years later that was responding to a wounded rabbit call. There are so many things about this story I love. 1, you have the vindication. Took 20 years, but you got it. And then 2, I love that we live in Arkansas where people are making wounded rabbit calls and calling up Black Panthers. So many things I love about Arkansas. That's close to the top of the list. Okay, moving on to Clayton, who says, I got one, i.e., he has a Black Panther story. So, Clayton, send it to us. Thomas says, I've seen 2 Black Panthers in my pasture growing up as a kid, and y'all say there's no confirmed sightings. I think you're full of bull hockey. Everybody says there's no Black Panthers. Yeah, there's no God either, right? It's always people just shut the heck up. There are Black Panthers in Arkansas. I don't give a darn what she says. Thomas, I'm on your side. I'm not saying there's no Black Panthers. It's the government that's telling you there's no Black Panthers and probably some random people on Facebook. But hey, I'm with you, bud. I've seen them too. So misplaced anger. Okay, moving on. Steve in Optimus said, I've seen one in Optimus, Arkansas. Thank you, Steve from Optimus. Susan said, I'm 48 and 28 years ago at Lake DeGray, I 100% knew that we were being hunted by one as we camped. Susan, I would love for you to DM us, send us a message, whatever. I want to hear more about this Black Panther hunting. Okay, moving on. Robert said, I saw one in Perry County in the 70s during deer season. All right, Sim said, add McNeil, Arkansas to the map and Columbia County. Or it may be McNeil, Arkansas and Columbia County. I'm not sure. Either way, I'll have to tell Andy McNeil. He'll get a kick out of that. I saw one about 30 feet in broad daylight. I stopped my car in the road and it was just standing there looking at me, nowhere near the tree line. That's pretty cool. I bet that was a neat thing to see, Sam. All right. Danny says, I've seen one more than once, and it's been seen by more than one person at the same time. I have scratches on the hood of the truck. This is in Amity, Arkansas. Wow, that's pretty cool, Danny. All right. Dennis says, yes, I did see one. Dennis, details. All right. Travis says, this is no bull hockey. Benton County has lots of them. Okay. Or sorry, not Benton County, Benton, Arkansas. Benton, Arkansas has lots of them. Cynthia says, I'm 52 years old and I saw a Black Panther north of Harrison. That sounds, I like north of Harrison is where I might expect to see a Black Panther. All right. Marlinda says, 1998, I was heading home from Salem, Arkansas to Melbourne, Arkansas. I was just about 10 miles south of Salem and near the Strawberry River, and I saw something move in the ditch up ahead of me. About the time I focused in on him, it turned and leaped from the ditch to about the yellow lines, and then it leaped again and was in the other ditch and gone. It took 2 leaps to cross the entire highway road in front of me. It was black and huge. 2 effortless leaps, just like a house cat going from one piece of furniture to the next. I was so excited that I finally got to see one of those panthers that all these farmers had talked about hearing or getting a glance of. No one believed me, and I was so confused why everyone thought I was lying because I had always heard people talk about seeing them. Then I was told that they supposedly don't really exist in Arkansas, and I am here to tell you I saw this thing as real as day and night. I will never forget it. I still watch for it going through there every time I drive through. Marlinda, I believe you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And you have a wonderful writing style. I appreciate you taking your time with that. Mike said 100% they are here. And he also sent a picture. He's got the receipts. Check out our Facebook page. All right. John said 1985-ish, middle section of the Buffalo River. I was deer hunting where Tomahawk Creek runs into the Buffalo. I saw something moving at the woodline, so pulled my gun up to use the scope to see what it was. It was a Black Panther. Told my dad when I got back to camp, and he didn't believe me until the next day when he hunted my spot. He saw her. Well played, John. I like that. All right. Laura says, I was coming home from eating one night and was almost home at Greer's Ferry Lake. I was stopped at the T in the road, and I noticed some movement when I looked to see if it was clear to pull out. I thought to myself, man, that is one huge cat. Then all of a sudden, I noticed a long black tail that was touching the ground. It was just slowly crossing the road. I started pulling up to try to get a picture, and that's when it noticed me and sped off into the woods. I sat there for a moment in disbelief. When I got home, I Googled panther, and that was definitely what I saw. I was telling one of the workers about it the next day at our building site. It did have some lighter specks all over it, and he said he had also seen them and thought maybe it had crossbred with some other animal. So like maybe a bobcat panther hybrid or something like that. Sounds very cool. Thank you, Laura. And again, that was near Greer's Ferry Lake. All right, next up, we have Gary, who says, in 1970, on then Highway 15 south of Warren, just before the Johnsonville Road, there was a black one beside the road in a curve. I like that. That's very descriptive. Thank you, Gary. Gary says, found a calf carcass in a tree in Subiaco. What would be able to pull a calf carcass up into a tree? Arkansas Game and Fish came out and basically said, yeah, they are here. They have been here. But if they acknowledge it, then that opens up a whole different set of stuff they would have to implement, and it would cost lots of money. I like that, Carrie. You've got the story, and then you also have the theory, and then you have the rationale. It's a very complete picture. Thank you, Carrie. Troy said, I have seen one, but no one believed me, so I stopped telling people about it. Troy, I believe you. Tell me about it. Cynthia says, add Bismarck, Arkansas, this year. Done. It's on the map. John said Yale County, Arkansas. That's near Andy's neck of the woods, so I'd love to hear more. A different John says, I live in Gravette, Arkansas, and I have seen one adult Black Panther and one small young Black Panther. Both were close to Spavinaw Creek. I also have had a couple of cows killed, but I can't confirm if it was a mountain lion or a Black Panther. Game and Fish said it wasn't killed by a panther because panthers don't live in the USA. The footprint looked like a large cat. Thank you, John. I'm sorry about your cows. I hope that you got some reimbursement for that. Joey sent us a photo, so go check that out. Rob said, add one to Glendale and Griffith Springs area. Had several sightings there between 1978 and 1982. Thank you, Rob. Added. Patty said, I had two that stayed close to my house. I have several stories. Patty, I would love to hear them all. Holly said, in Rosebud, Arkansas, we would hear them all the time screaming in the woods. First time I heard it, I was 10, and I told my dad we needed to go help because there is a lady screaming. He told me, get in the house. That is no lady. Holly, thank you very much. I hope it was not a woman who needed help. Randy, we live in Greene County, Arkansas. About 50 years ago, my dad worked in Jonesboro, and his night shift ended at 12 o'clock midnight. He and my uncle saw the Black Panther several times crossing the road. We had a creek running across our 40 acres. We had been gone for the weekend and coming home late on a Sunday night. We couldn't find our 3 cows. So my brother and dad took off across the field to cross the creek to see if the cows were in an old barn on the other side. I wanted to join them and was running towards their flashlight. Ooh, this sounds spooky already. When I got to them, I had scared them so bad, Dad picked me up and ran back to the house. They had been listening to a panther screaming down close to the bridge. I scared them by running towards them. I bet you did, Randy. Another time, I was out fishing with my cousin, and before we crossed Black River on Highway 135 going to Corning, Arkansas, we turned north on a gravel road, and as soon as I turned, the Black Panther jumped the entire road and vanished. Thank you, Randy. I love those stories. All right. Ricky Lee said 2016, down outside of Arkadelphia on Copperhead Trail on our hunting lease, we saw a Black Panther cub during bow season. Okay, we've got proof of procreation. So cubs grow up to be adults. All right. Mike said, I've seen 2 over 10 years. They are here. 10 years ago on my tree stand, I had 4 deer come crashing through the woods, making all kinds of noise. They all ran through the lane, and shortly later, the panther came into the lane and stopped. Then it took off after the deer. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate the hunting stories. All right. Tyler says, I don't know why y'all act like it's only old timers. I'm 42. Tyler, I'm with you. Again, no, I didn't mean to offend. I've spent more time in the woods than anybody else I know that's living. Panthers are out there. Very elusive and mostly only move at night. I've been very close to several of them. I 100% believe you, Tyler. Thank you for sharing. Justin said, I saw a panther 10 years ago across from my house in Snow, Arkansas. It was 150 pounds, very slick black color, shiny hair, and round tail. It looked to be stalking a rabbit. That's cool. I love the description. Thank you, Justin. Anthony said, I saw one in the 90s at Combs, Arkansas. This is our second Combs. It went across the road at around midnight. I had the bright blue headlights that were popular then. It was long, black, and beautiful. You could see its muscles rippling beneath its slick black coat. It was fluid in motion like it poured across the road like a shadow. When its nose was at the center line of the highway, its tail was in the ditch. It turned its head and looked at me without missing a stride. I was awestruck as it disappeared into the night. The next day, I was excitingly relating the story at work, including the location. One of the guys said, "I believe you." He said his friend lived in the house right in the direction it was going. He was in the Navy with him. They were visiting, and my friend was about to head home, so they were still talking at his truck. So he let the tailgate down and sat down. As they were talking, they heard a scream, and he almost peed his pants. Needless to say, he left post haste. Now, just a few miles from there, there's an area called Panther Creek. The old timers named stuff for a reason. Also, there's a big cat rescue place at Eureka Springs called Turpentine Creek that has a lot of big cats. They had a black panther there. It looks exactly like what I saw. I was reading an article a few years ago where sometime around 1817 or 1818, the last known jaguar was killed. I think it was near Waldron or in that area. Thank you, Anthony. You're a wonderful writer. I love your description of the Black Panther. I appreciate that story. Mandy says 1996, 2010, and 2017. Within a 10-mile radius, 3 different sightings over a 23-year span of a melanistic mountain lion. That is a very appropriate way to phrase that, Mandy. Appreciate that. It was during fall hunting season on rainy days all 3 times. So in fall of 1996, she says, at dusk we heard what sounded like a lady screaming at a friend's house located close to a large wooded area. Looked out the window and a large black cat was standing taller than her Rottweiler. It was in the driveway facing the house. It just walked through the yard to the woods and disappeared after standing off for several minutes with the dog. Okay, fast forward to fall of 2010. Just after midnight, less than 10 miles from the first encounter, we saw what we originally thought was a black dog dragging a deer carcass across the highway. When we stopped to avoid hitting it, it was clearly a mountain lion and it appeared black. Next up, in fall of 2017, rainy dark day about dusk, my mother pulled into my driveway, located between the previous 2 sightings, and backing up to the same several hundred acres of untouched woods. She started blowing her horn when she saw a young or small black mountain lion stalking my pet pigs. I saw it running toward the woods as I came out, and it was the size of a coyote, but clearly was a cat. She had watched it stalking the pigs as close as 20 feet from her car. My mom was in shock. Mandy goes on to say, lighting, molting, tone of year, and being wet can cause the dark gray mountain lions to look black. I'm certain since it was raining every time and these cats are likely related. It was a combination of environmental factors causing the melanistic phenomenon. This was located just a few miles above the Arkansas state line in south central Missouri. Mandy, that is a very scientific assessment of what you saw, and I can't argue with you there. Thank you very much for sharing. Now, moving on to Anthony, he said, we have one here 7 miles from Pangburn in Searcy on Fairview Road, and it makes the noise at night like a woman screaming. I wish Game and Fish would come catch it. I have 3 kids and 7 acres. Anthony, I hope they come check it out too. I would be scared to death to let my kids or my dogs out at night with a screaming panther nearby. All right, Carol Ann says, I have seen one in Garfield, Arkansas. It stuck its paw through the cat door next to the sliding glass door. So thank you for sharing that terrifying story. Stephanie says, South Arkansas at our deer camp down close to Monticello and the road to the Saline River. This was in the 80s. Okay, thank you, Stephanie. And then Leo says, I live in Benton, Arkansas, and my neighbor has pictures of one that he took in the front yard. They are 100% in Arkansas. Leo, see if your neighbor will send that our way, post it up on Facebook, something like that. Whew, that's 104 Black Panther stories, y'all. We did make it. So thank you for sticking with it. Y'all are continuing to send them. I may do another episode if we continue to get them. We will definitely continue to keep that sightings map updated. You guys stay safe out there. Have a wonderful Halloween. Be careful in the deer woods, and I'll see you later.